Welcome to The Good Word. My name is Vincent Goodwill, senior NBA writer for Yahoo Sports. We are part of the Ball Don't Lie Network. Get us wherever you are getting your podcast. And of course, we are always on YouTube. It is a solo show today, me and producer John. We got a few things to talk about, most notably the in-season tournament. But first, y'all, I want to start with something I found really interesting. Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, rabble-rouser, annoying guy sometimes, most of the time. He's selling majority stake of his team to real estate tycoon Miriam Adelson. Now, I have no idea. Had no idea. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't really ring a bell. It didn't ring a bell in anything sports. Like usually you start hearing things ever so slightly when a team is about to go up. Didn't really hear anything because nobody would ever believe that Mark Cuban would sell the Mavs. But he's got a nice little setup here. Not only is he selling them for $3.5 billion, but he's also going to retain the ability to run basketball operations. So basically, he got $3.5 billion richer and still gets to do the things that he does with the Mavericks. Still gets to basically act like he's the guy. So I guess he's going from team owner to team employee. But hey, that's you, right? All right, cool. That's a nice, cool $3.2 billion profit for when he bought the team in 2000. All right, cool. Remember though, yesterday, before the announcement came out about this from our buddy Mark Stein, there was also the announcement that he was going to be stepping away from Shark Tank after one more season. A show I've never actually watched, so I'm not an expert on that. But John, you found this really interesting. The who he sold to, because I needed someone to help me fill in the blanks, and you helped me fill in the blanks in a major way.
Was this my notes on Miriam Adelson that opened the door for you?
It opened the door, and it was like, oh, this is going to be very interesting / weird.
Well, I'll tell you my personal experience with the Adelsons, which is Miriam and her late departed husband Sheldon, was my parents lived in Las Vegas. So I spent some time in Las Vegas. I knew things that were going on in Las Vegas. And I knew that there was a time where there was a Las Vegas newspaper that was being critical of the Adelsons. And the Adelsons, who essentially own Vegas or most of Vegas, went ahead and bought the newspaper and then just started firing anyone who criticized them. And the newspaper all of a sudden started writing very glowing things about the Adelsons and stopped criticizing them. And so I have always known them, mostly Sheldon at the time, to be someone who didn't really believe in an open and honest democratic society. Miriam, if you do any digging into her, was given the 2018 Presidential Medal of Freedom by then President Donald Trump, mostly because her and her husband donated not just millions, probably not even just tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions to Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign, his presidential inauguration, his defense fund against the Miller investigation into Russian interference, and the 2020 campaign. She, as a Jewish lady and an Israeli, she is a dual citizen, said that Donald Trump deserves a book of Trump in the Bible due to his support of Israel. So she has made her politics very well known. And I found it mostly curious because Mark Cuban has also made his politics very well known. They're just the opposite politics to her.
Are we sure? Because, and I say that to say because, and I'm not going to super dab into politics, but I think there is a strategy for people who label themselves as centrists. And it's a way to look rational in front of irrational people, right? If you ever notice that, just notice that it's a way you can't look rational to the left. People think that the left is too rational, but if you're to the right, which people tend to believe is a bit on the extreme side, if you position yourselves over there and you just tone down the crazy, you're still to the right. You're just a little more sane about it. So I don't think that Cubes is totally different than that. I'm very curious, considering they employ Kyrie Irving, right? We all know all the trouble that Kyrie Irving got into last season, talking about, Hebrews to Negroes, the Amazon, 3-hour thing and everything else. Y'all all remember that. And you guys also remember the list of things he had to do. The anti-Semitic groups were protesting outside of Barclays Center. It was a lot of things going on there before he got traded from Brooklyn to Dallas, and now he's under a long-term contract. And assuming this gets approved by the Board of Governors, which I can't say it would or wouldn't, I have no reason to believe it wouldn't, then it's going to make for a very interesting employer-employee relationship. I just don't think this is the end of it. I feel like this is the beginning, John. Because Cuban is such an interesting figure. If nothing else about Cuban, he's going to be an interesting figure. He's going to zig when everybody else is zagging. And I saw a lot of people yesterday try to make some correlation, like John just said, about Vegas. Except I don't think the Dallas Mavericks are moving to Las Vegas. I don't think that's the thing at all. I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be leveraged for a new arena in downtown Dallas, especially considering how the Adelsons are, into the gambling. When you're into Vegas, you're into the gambling. That's just how it works. So I think it's going to be a very curious thing to see how this all develops and to see the tentacles of this. The Adelsons themselves, if you're a Trump supporter, I mean, I suppose you can be that. There's no law that says you can't, but I'm not going to give my politics on here, but I'm sure people can, sort of rationally assume who I don't get down with, right? But the NBA and John, I'm very curious what you think about this. Remember, they take election day off. They've positioned themselves, the league has positioned itself as a place that, hey, we have all these different initiatives, whether it's going to be prison reform or voting, all these things that are not centrist, all these things that are a little more left-leaning. Like a couple of days ago, I was at Genesee County Jail with Kyle Kuzma in Flint, Michigan, because he's from Flint, where he donated over $60,000 to a jail for women, and a really huge program and an initiative about when they are entered back into society and helping them get jobs. And he put together a Christmas party for them, their caregivers, and their children, and refurbished jail cells inside of the county jail, and wanted to be part of, jail reform and prison reform. And I don't know if that would necessarily be the Adelsons get down. So we say. So, John, I'm very curious, when the Adelsons come in, assuming they come in, do you think they bought an NBA team just to pay some money and be quiet and let Mark Cuban do the talking for them?
If they did, which I'm not going to say whether or not they did. I don't know Miriam Adelson from a hole in the wall. If she did, it would be the first time that I can remember in the NBA or maybe even in any professional sports league in the last 20, 30, 40 years where someone has bought a majority share in the team without really caring about what's going on the court, on the field, with the roster, with the salaries, with the payroll, any of that. It's been a long, long time since someone has bought a majority share of a team and just let someone else run it and hid away in the shadows and not commented to reporters or held press conferences or had open and public opinions about how things should be run. That's why I don't know that this can work. Like, at some point, the person who's in charge of basketball operations has to go to the owner. They don't call them owners anymore, right? Governors. At some point, they have to go to the governor and say, hey, I think we should do this, but it's going to cost a little extra money. Can you free up some from your pocket? That's a situation Mark Cuban has literally never been in. Literally, in his entire life, he's essentially just worked for himself, and the money comes from him. And I wonder what happens if he does that and Miriam Adelson says no. What then?
Well, here's a number of things that come up for me. And trust me, we're going to get to the basketball because I literally just thought about this. Remember the Mavs had some controversy a couple of years ago when Mark Cuban, went on, I think it was still Rachel Nichols, ESPN, The Jump, and was talking about all the things that he didn't know and all the things that he was learning and everything else. And I believe they hired the first African-American COO there. I think his last name is Marshall. Yeah.
Yep.
Cynthia Marshall, right? All right, cool. What happens there? Now, to a larger point that I don't think that people necessarily get about these rich folks, and this has nothing to do with political leanings at all. Rich people don't buy things like professional sports teams so they can be quiet. Rich people buy sports teams so they can be known and they can be seen. There is no greater feeling for being a billionaire than to walk courtside and to become this you're more than a famous person, right? Because you can be rich and you can walk into Staples Center and you will just be a rich dude, right? Because there's someone there who has a fraction of the net worth that you have, but they get put on the Jumbotron and people cheer them. And it's across the way is Denzel Washington and Floyd Mayweather and all these people who people know who are visible. And then all of a sudden, when you enter this club, you're no longer just a random billionaire. You are an owner of a pro sports team. You mean something to a group of people in this very, very small club. And all of a sudden, and this is where it gets really icky for someone like me because I ain't about this life, people start calling you Mr. Cuban, Mr. Ford. All of a sudden, all these owners, we have to give them a level of reverence and call them Mr. and Mrs. and all that stuff. You know what I'm calling? I'm going to call you Jeannie. I'm going to call you Jeannie. All right? Mr. and Mrs., that's a little too 1950s for me, if you get my drift, okay? Not quite my get down. We got a tone. We get that. Look, I don't think it's necessarily the biggest harm in it, but it just makes me feel a little swarmy. And for clearly, the Adelsons, they are clearly operating from a different game, whether it's the newspaper stuff or the Trump stuff. They are clearly about exercising influence. My question will be, what will their influence be when they get inside the NBA? So I have a confession to make, y'all. I probably told y'all here and any other place that, you guys have seen me or heard me. I think the in-season tournament is hokey. I think it's a bunch of nonsense, right? You address a problem by saying it's a problem and everything else, right? Y'all, this in-season tournament has produced a bunch of playoff intensity I never expected to see. I completely discounted the fact that these players are cheap as all hell. And I don't mean cheap like they don't know what to do with their money. I mean cheap like they ain't paying for Pandora. LeBron James does not pay for Pandora. I don't know who actually still uses Pandora, but LeBron actually gets the commercials. You ever been so annoyed when you're playing something and then an ad comes in? Nah, that ain't really it. I ain't talking about here. You know what I mean, y'all? Because we paying some bills here. I'm saying in general when you just listening to music or something like that, right? So that $500,000 for every player on the winning team means a lot to these guys. Christmas bonus, side bonus, if you get my drift, all that stuff. So now we've had a bunch of compelling games on Tuesdays and Fridays. And like J.A. Donde said, you got the big ass cup in the middle of the court. You got these goofy, ridiculous courts. Now we have reached the knockout round. And if you're hearing this on Wednesday and you got to see the Draymond Green return for Golden State, you saw the Sacramento Kings exercise some big demons against Golden State, coming back from down 24, down 17 at the half, down 6 in the last minute, and they won in regulation. So now they advance, and they would have advanced anyway as long as they did not lose by 12 points or more. But now we have these 4 matchups that will begin on Monday and Tuesday, and then everybody who wins will go to Vegas, where I will be for games on, I believe, on Thursday for the semifinals. The final will be on Saturday night. So I just thought about this. Questions that need answered for all 8 teams that have advanced to the knockout round. Remember, shockingly, no Denver Nuggets, right? No surprising Minnesota Timberwolves, no Golden State, no Oklahoma City. But we still got some compelling teams here that you're going to be hearing a little bit from as the season goes on. And I want to start with the New York Knicks, even though they're playing on Tuesday. I'm going to start the New York Knicks and the Milwaukee Bucks because I feel like that's a really good matchup because you got teams that are, I won't say they're going in two different directions, but there's teams that looks like they're finding themselves, right? The Knicks are Team ISO. You got Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett. They had a really compelling comeback against the Knicks. I think it was Friday night. And I was like, oh, okay, this could get interesting. But then I saw the Milwaukee Bucks last night in the first game of the TNT doubleheader. And I saw the Bucks. And this is where I'm going to start, Producer John. Are we seeing Dame time late in games? Dame being the number one option, making plays. Chris Middleton being the number two option there. And Giannis actually playing off the ball, playing on the weak side. I think he only had one impactful play late in the game, offensive play, where, the Miami defense scrambled and boom, he had a dunk just because someone left him wide open and they're not expecting him rather to go 1-on-5 and facing a defense and wearing that body out. And now you got Dame who can shoot from the parking lot and Chris Middleton, assuming his body gets healthy, as a secondary playmaker. Could this be the formula for the Bucks, who I believe have now won 8 of 9 going into the knockout round? That is my question for them. I worry about their defense because their defense is really struggling without Jrue Holiday, but it's more than Jrue Holiday. It's Middleton, who's still recovering from the knee. It's the rim protection. It's, of course, the perimeter with Dame Lillard, but it's a lot going on there. But their offense late in games where they've struggled over the past couple of years, maybe they figure some things out. Maybe they're beginning to figure some things out, and they're going to find themselves in a knockdown, drag-out fight with the Boston Celtics in the conference finals. But that's well above and beyond. That's the question for the Bucks. For the Knicks, can they pass the ball? That's the question that I need answered, John. Can the Knicks pass the ball? Can ball movement, especially against the Bucks, right? Can ball movement be a tenet for them? I don't know if you're going to win on a diet of just breaking down from Julius Randle, dribble up at the top, or Jalen Brunson, who has an individual matchup against Damian Lillard. But I don't know if you can win, right? I don't know if they can win like that. I'm just very curious. This is almost like a strength versus strength thing, at least in this matchup. How do you see that, John?
This is what I was kind of with you. I thought the in-season tournament was a gimmick, and I thought it was going to feel hokey and come on, these are just regular season games. Give it up, whatever. They've done a great job. I think the courts, as ugly as they are good because when you think of the playoffs, like you were talking about with Adonde the other day, you think about there's always a thing on the court that says it's the playoffs, right? It's the finals, it's whatever. So just having that different court, letting everyone know, hey, these games mean something more. They mean something different is cool. And I think you're right that we're getting some playoff intensity. The thing I like the most is that almost every one of these teams that is in the quarterfinals has something to prove right now. Like the Bucks are trying to prove, hey, we have already figured out this Giannis Dame thing. At least we figured it out enough, right? Like even the Celtics, who are great, are trying to prove, hey, we're great now. And it used to be these teams would shuffle the cards, shuffle the deck chairs, whatever, and go, we got 6 months to figure everything out before we have to play playoff basketball. What's interesting to me is how much are these quarterfinals, semifinals, finals games going to feel like playoff basketball? And for the Knicks, we've seen the Knicks are kind of set up well for playoff basketball, right? Like it's dirty, it's gritty defense. And when things really, really slow down and you're just playing half-court basketball against half-court basketball and you got to beat your one man, you got to play iso ball, the Knicks are absolutely built for that. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Knicks can drag the Bucks down in the mud, or if
Mm.
the Bucks have already figured out this offensively enough to just run up the score to the point where the Knicks can't catch them.
Well, it's a couple things. For one, the Knicks play 82 playoff games, right? And that sounds really, really cute until you actually have to play playoff basketball, until you actually have to raise your game to a different level, and you got to have something in the tank. But Tibbs is not going to be the type of coach to let you have anything in the tank on a Tuesday night in February. Luckily, it's December, or it will be December. And like you said, John, will the Bucks be able to get into a track meet with the Knicks? Because they know the Knicks won't be able to keep up. And will the Knicks be able to drag the Bucks into the mud? And hey, all I can say is, if you drag the Bucks into the mud, make sure one of those guys ain't Bobby Portis. Second matchup. And this is the one that I think has the most star power, right? And they're saving it. I'm going to say saving it, but it's just a primetime matchup on Tuesday night. It's the Suns and the Lakers, a matchup that we've seen twice already. I think it's going to be one of those schedule quirks where they wind up playing 5 times this year. So the Suns, we won't see, in likelihood, I doubt that we would see Bradley Beal. Maybe we do, right? Everything going on with his back. But Devin Booker is playing at such a high level. And Dan Devine talked about it on Divine Intervention with his guest, Michael Pina. Go check that out. And they talked about Book basically transforming himself into a point guard without like the shooting guard turning himself into point guard quirks, like shooting too much and turning the ball over too much. Like he's not doing that. Like he's almost working himself. It's almost something really, really remarkable that I don't think we give enough attention to because we don't know what to make of the Phoenix Suns yet. And like we talked about a couple days ago with J.A. Donde, the dependency of the Lakers on LeBron James. Not just how many minutes is LeBron going to play. He's averaging around 33, and he just passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for most minutes played in the history of the NBA and everything else. And, of course, you add the playoff minutes, you add the Olympic minutes, you add life. I wonder how much the Lakers are going to be dependent on him through this endeavor, right? They've been heavily dependent on him already. I think Anthony Davis gets a little, I won't say too much flack, but it's heavier. It's heavier because it's the Lakers. Like I said before, it's not many players who can carry an offense and truly, truly anchor a defense. Watching that Bucks Heat game last night, Bam Adebayo is one of them. It might not be a second guy in the league that's actually doing it, that's anchoring the defense and has the capability of either being a hub on offense or being a high usage player on offense at the same time without your body breaking down or without something suffering. So how much can LeBron carry this Lakers team? How much is that going to be important to him? As we know, really important. The man pays for Pandora. It's going $500,000 going to mean a lot to him. And for the Suns, of course, Devin Booker, being able to continue what he's doing while Bradley Beal is out and they're working him back to try to make sure that when he does come back, they're not worried about this thing flaring up. But like I said before, when your back hurts, don't stop hurting. Now, John, do you know what Monday is? Monday is a very, very important day in the history of the good word with Goodwill. Do you know that?
No, I don't know that. Wait. Is Monday your birthday?
Monday is my birthday.
Hey!
There we go. But yes, John, December 4th is a very important day. It is my birthday. Apparently, it's also Jay-Z's birthday. It's Tyra Banks' birthday. And it is the first day of the knockout round where you got the Kings and the Pelicans. And we saw the Kings exercise their demons with the Golden State Warriors, where, y'all, they look like they won a playoff series last night. The way that they celebrated, it wasn't just getting to this stage. It was beating those Warriors with Draymond Green, with Stephen Curry. Maybe it's a changing of the guard. Maybe it's just them figuring it out and wanting to be considered as a serious franchise. And then you got the Pelicans, who really want to be considered as a serious franchise, but I have questions about. I have legit questions about the Pelicans. I think they have like finals talent, potential, scheme, all of that, but it's just how do they get there? Because there's about 5 or 6 teams in the West that you could realistically see making a finals run if Nikola Jokic doesn't exist, if Nikola Jokic isn't completely healthy, but you have to put yourself in the situations to take advantage of breaks if they come. So my questions that need answered for the Kings is Keegan Murray, who did not play Tuesday night, he was missed. Now, you had Kevin Huerter. He stepped up and made some shots. The Kings had a young chap named Sasha Vincenkoff, right? Hope I'm pronouncing that right. He hit a few threes, and I'm not sure he was on Golden State scouting report because they were looking at this dude like, who this Harpo? Like, they had no clue who this guy was. And apparently also the Warriors had no clue that Moses Moody was on their team because they pulled him out after he scored 11 in the fourth when those two were going shot for shot and Moses Moody was keeping them in the game. Steve Kerr had the bright idea, hey, let's go with these vets. But to the point of Keegan Murray, Keegan's only shooting 29% from three this year. Last year, he was right at 40. He was such a huge piece for them. And you need all that space with De'Aaron Fox. You need all that space with Sabonis, because if Sabonis can't overpower you, then he's not necessarily as effective. He's not going to go through you. You got to see that against Draymond Green. You got to see that against Kevon Looney. So I'm very curious if he's going to be able to do that against, Zion Williamson. So that means you need shooters on the floor. And if Keegan Murray is back, he's got to be able to rediscover that shot. And for the Pelicans, with CJ McCollum, who's been out with the lung injury, I believe, which I didn't even know there could be a such thing as a lung injury. If you're having problems breathing, you got bigger problems than injuries. Like, injuries are something that prevents you from playing. Lungs help you breathe. Okay. So I'm very curious, though, what it looks like when he comes back. How's his wind going to look? How's he going to be able to configure himself with this iteration of the Pels, who I feel like, John, we've always said, if the Pelicans just get healthy, now I feel like they're starting to sort of kind of get on the healthy side.
You know why I like this matchup? And this is going to be weird. I'm going to defend LeBron for a second. Because you were saying LeBron's cheap, and that's why he's going all out on this. I think it's the opposite. I think these guys they're seeing that this game is a playoff-like atmosphere. It feels a little bit like playoff basketball in November. And I think LeBron and the Lakers want to prove to themselves and maybe everybody else that this team is good enough to beat the Suns in a win-or-go-home situation. This team is good enough to beat the Celtics, which I think the finals might end up being Lakers-Celtics, in a win-or-go-home situation, because if they prove it to themselves and everyone else, then they can kind of coast for a little while, right? No one's going to worry about, are the Lakers good enough to be in the playoffs? Because we'll be like, they already in this type of playoff atmosphere, they did some stuff in the in-season tournament. The Pelicans and Kings, it's a similar thing, except I don't think they're trying to prove it so that they can coast. I think they're just trying to prove to themselves, hey, we're in this atmosphere. I think the Kings last night proved to themselves, we are now good enough to beat the Warriors in a win or go home situation. And the Pelicans are trying to prove to themselves and the world, we are ready to compete in playoff-like atmospheres. And I think last year when the Pelicans were riding really high, anytime they were playing against a team that was like a championship contender, whatever, you saw their best because they were trying to prove to everyone, we are in this atmosphere. And that's why I really like this matchup between the Pelicans and the Kings. I wish there's a chance CJ McCollum comes back for it. I think they've been talking about he's coming back sometime soon.
Right.
I wish there was a little bit more runway because I want to see the best version of him and the best version of Zion and the best version of the Pelicans take on the best version of the Kings. We're probably not going to get that, but it's still going to be a really interesting matchup between two young teams on a national stage in a playoff-like atmosphere, trying to prove to the entire world that they belong here. And that's really cool. My question to you, and I don't want to get off track with this.
No, sure.
How do you get a playoff-like atmosphere at a neutral site? Like, how are they going to do this in Vegas? Where are they going to play? How many people are going to be seated there? And how many of them are going to be actual fans of that team? as opposed to just general NBA fans who are there to have a good time. Because if it's not fans of the team, it's not really a playoff atmosphere, right?
No, well, here's the thing. Vegas is the ultimate transplant town,
True.
right? So there's very few Vegas-like natives. Like the thing that I've heard about the Las Vegas Raiders is that they play 16 road games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When those fans pack Allegiant, it's usually fans of the other team. So I don't think that you'd have to twist the arms of many of these season ticket holders. Maybe the Pelicans, because they've had trouble drawing. But the Kings fans, that's not a hard drive or hard trip.
Do you think the
Las
Pacers
Vegas
fans would show up to Vegas if the Pacers were playing somebody?
I actually think Pacer fans would show up in droves. Hey, you live in Indianapolis. You are looking for a reason to get out. Okay? You are looking for a reason to go do something to get your ass out of Indianapolis. I don't know if you've heard about Celtics fans. They're insane.
Yeah.
They'll show up anywhere, right? So will Knicks fans. I don't get why Knicks fans actually exist, like nationwide. I don't get it. Like if you grew up in New York, all right, cool. If you moved to New York and you lived there for 10 years, you've become indoctrinated into, like Knicksdom. Like my best friend that I grew up with since I was 9 years old lives in New York now. And his wife's stepdad is a longtime Knicks fan. So every time, John, I go to New York, I just pick on him. I just bag on him. I'm like, dude, you live in Brooklyn and you're rooting for the Knicks. He looks at me as if the Brooklyn Nets don't exist. And if I told that man, hey, there's a trip to Vegas on the line and you can go see the Knicks in Las Vegas, that man would sell his wife's right arm to go to Vegas to go see the Knicks. I guarantee it, right? So, no, I think the novelty of it early, especially considering it's one game, it's not a playoff series, so it's not a huge investment, and you can make a weekend of it. Games on semifinals on Thursday, so you get there Wednesday, you can leave Friday. You can literally, make a short trip out of it. I'm not sure if Usher's going to be there, you know what I mean? But you can do some things with it. And if you wind up staying through Saturday because of the championship game, then you stay through Sunday. Like Vegas is becoming this town before it gets an NBA team and everything else, which assuredly will happen when the new media rights deal is done. Vegas is first on the list. Like it's an event town, and this is an event. I don't think this is going to be one of those things that rotates around like an all-star weekend. I think in general, this is going to be, hey, y'all, we want to go to Vegas. And I've heard a few players in interviews post-game saying, hey, why you guys playing so hard? We want to go to Vegas. All right, cool. Go to Vegas. Do what you do. This has been a really compelling thing so far. In the last game, as we sort of lightweight discussed, Celtics, Pacers, it's fear. We're going to go into the time. I'm going to go into a time capsule here because I saw some people on the Twitter machine put up Tyrese Halliburton's numbers, which are really, really impressive, and juxtapose them against Steve Nash's first MVP numbers. And like Tyrese Halliburton should be MVP. And I realized that it's 18 years, or it would be 19 years from Steve Nash's first MVP with the Phoenix Suns, where the 7 seconds or less, Phoenix Suns revolutionized basketball. And you know what that got me to thinking, John? You know what that got me to thinking?
What's that?
We old. That's all that is. We old. We are 2005 is to 2023. As 1987 is to 2005. 1987 to 2005 feels so far apart. 2005 does not feel that far away from us right now. I remember 2005. I was in college in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Like I was in like real college, like broke. You know what I mean? Like I remember 2005. But that just shows that the game moves so much faster than ever, especially when you consider, Steve Nash's MVP numbers doesn't jump off the screen, like 15-11 or whatever, and Tyrese Halliburton averaging, 24 and 12. but it's hard to contextualize that. But with the Pacers, they play an extremely exciting brand of basketball, and it's led them to this point where they're going to be reintroduced because they have not been a team on the national scale for a number of years, almost a decade since they went to their last Eastern Conference final with Paul George and the Pacers. And they had home court advantage against the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Miami Heat. That's how good they were. They're introducing themselves. And then they're going up against the standard of the Eastern Conference, a team that's been, I think, to 5 of the last 7 Eastern Conference finals, and they've been to a final of the Boston Celtics. And the question that needs answered for the Pacers is, y'all put up a lot of points, but y'all give up a lot of points, right? Can y'all defend at a reasonable level to advance to Vegas? For the Celtics, it's, I want to know how deep they're going to go. Like, their top 6 and 7 is probably the best in the league if Porzingis is healthy, if Jaylen Brown only dribbles but so much, right? Drew Holiday has been a welcome addition. Derek White, all that. Like, they've mastered having the best 7 in the league. And you're going to have injuries, you're going to have circumstances, you're going to have foul trouble. Usually you win with 7.5 and 8. They've got 7. So to me, how will that 40-minute a night show? Like, I got no problem watching Jason Tatum. I think he's this close to being a made man. I don't want to go as far as saying he's the best American-born player in the NBA right now, but he's elevated himself to an MVP strata. He is a bus driver. You guys remember our Levels project before the start of the season. He was in that top tier, players who can be the best player on a championship team. For the Celtics, I'm very curious if they can win with 7. Can you win with 7? If they can win with 7 here, maybe it shifts the math. The same thing that John was talking about with the Lakers. If the Lakers win here, maybe it shifts the math as far as what they expect of themselves between now and April. And I know it's a small, super small sample size. It's not a playoff series where you got the travel, you've got the back and forth, a 7-game series. But it is a game where it's elevated stakes. It is a game where it's a litmus test. It is a game where you figure out if anybody's got the lemon booty. If you figure out if anybody is made for prime time. But I think all in all, this has been a wonderful invention. I was a critic of the play-in tournament. I did not like that. I thought it was a bit hokey. I'm a traditionalist, as you guys can probably see. I live in the crates. But this has been something that has been really, really successful. It's going to introduce teams, players, and storylines that we can follow for the rest of the season. And we can see and say that players have done this in circumstances that meant something more than just a Tuesday night in December. Now we're just going to have to go back to regular old NBA basketball starting in December, the start of the season. With that, y'all, everybody be safe. Have a great week. Thanks to producer John, Evan, and Ron, the team that handles so much behind the scenes. You guys heard a lot of John today. John got to kill it on the mic. I like John. These Wednesdays are going to be fun, okay? I want you to keep your mic on, all right? Jake and Dan will be back for another episode of No Cap Room tomorrow. I will be back with another episode of The Good Word on a Monday on my damn birthday. Why? Because I love y'all, and B, because I forgot to take damn day off. Until then, everybody be safe.